Good afternoon. On separation between religion and state in the European Union, I will try to give you some examples because it would be far too difficult and too complex to explain the complete, exhaustive situation. Some states recognize the importance of separation between religion and state more than others, but there is no such thing as one European model. There aren't even different models, although we can say that secularization is a global phenomenon within the European Union at, let's say, various rhythm. You could say that the North has opted for secular models far ahead on the south of Europe. France is the exception, of course, with État laïque, the secular state, written in their constitution. So, in fact, the EU member states all have different constitutions and policies regarding religion. It doesn't seem a priority to the European Commission to create directives on that. It's not an economical issue, of course. So they don't aspire to one clear solution that guarantees less impact of religion on daily life. So in order to analyze the extent of separation between religion and state, we must examine the various dimensions of the relation religion and state. Those dimensions regard the constitutional positions that countries have, the influence of religion on political decision-making, the social services and the implication of church in social services, and the role of religion in education. So I will give you some examples of those dimensions of impact of religion on legislation and daily life. We will talk about the dress code for civil servants, education, financial contribution, abortion, and so on. So the dress code for civil servants may sound symbolic, but it is quite an important issue in several European countries. In the UK, there is a certain tolerance, we could call it tolerance. It is often called tolerance, by the way. The Sikh wearing the turbans, and for Muslim police officers, for example, there is the possibility, I've read, to wear the headscarf, and a headscarf designed to fit with the uniform. In France, on the other hand, there is a total ban on religious symbols for all civil servants, whether they have contact with the public or not. In Belgium, it's typical for our country, I must say, there is no explicit dress code for civil servants. There is no clear legislation. But the police is neutral. Other civil servants aren't necessarily. It depends on the regulation of the city or municipality they work for. For example, in Ghent, one of our historical cities, neutrality has recently been abolished. I must say I've tried to stop it with my liberal colleagues in the city of Ghent, but it didn't work out. In Antwerp, on the other hand, it's about 40 miles away from Ghent, neutrality of public authority is imposed to all civil servants. And in all the other cities, municipalities, and even at the regional level, the problem is just being avoided. If we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. That's a bit typical for the Belgian Catholic philosophy, of course. But when it comes to education, Flanders, that's the north of Belgium, has a vast majority of Catholic schools, nearly 80%. Those schools are entirely financed and subsidized like public schools, like state schools, I would say. Those Catholic schools are not very active on religion, I must admit. So it's a bit, the situation is not entirely clear. Some Catholic schools do insist on Catholic values, others don't. Others are most interested in their reputation as being good schools who prepare you well for university, etc. But the thing is, the result is, whether they're very Catholic or not, they've created for the last decades generations of people who are never going to criticize the system they live in. That's what I come to find out when I have discussion with other people of my generation or even younger about Catholicism or about the influence of religion in our country. They just deny that there is some sort of a problem. Of course, the problem is not as huge as in theocracies or in countries that don't recognize the separation between church and state as a whole, but you can't say that you just don't need a discussion about it. They just swipe everything under the carpet, and that's a bit of a problem for me. Regarding financial contributions to religion, we can find great differences within the EU. For example, France does offer the possibility to support church buildings, not every church building though, but it doesn't pay salaries of priests and so on. Belgium pays everything. The taxpayer, this is, pays everything. Salaries, pensions, church buildings, the whole story. In Germany and Italy, there's what I would call a more honest system. The state facilitates the financement, giving the citizen, so the taxpayer, the possibility to declare to what religion or non-confessional organization his or her contribution should be made. It is called, in Germany it's called a Kirchensteuer, and in Italy it's called, for example, otto per mille. So when you just fill out your tax form, you can choose to what religion or ONG, for example, your contribution goes. Now, on abortion, the situation is a little bit more diverse. We passed, in Belgium, that is, we passed a bill on abortion to legalize abortion in 1990. That's not really early, as in France. Abortion was made legal in 1975. I wasn't even born then, by the law of Simone Veil, a very courageous woman. I truly admire her. But in Spain, for example, there was a liberalization of abortion only in the year 2000. So abortion in Belgium is legal, but there's more than meets the eye. It's not as simple as it should be. Although the abortion bill is very clear on the rights of patients and individual doctors, hospitals do not always respect the law. They often refuse to apply abortions, even when women can give more than one argument as to why they wish to have an abortion. The reason is quite simple, and you will easily recognize it because we treated this topic this morning. 65 and over 65% even of our health institutions is in the hands of the group Caritas Catholica, a very rich and quite powerful organization from the civil society. It's not a political organization. They haven't been elected, but they have ties to the Christian Democrats Party. It's not that party, obviously, who wrote the abortion bill in 1990. It were socialists and liberals who acted together on this. So this proves, this case, the fact that it's not quite easy to have an abortion in every hospital in Belgium proves that even when there is less religious influence on political decision-making, you also need secular social services to make things work, to make sure that the rule of law is respected. When I heard our American friend this morning explaining that some people had to go 500 miles to get an abortion, had to travel for it. I can reassure you, in Belgium it's a bit the same problem, but the dimensions are different, of course. 500 miles doesn't simply exist within Belgium. So we're a bit lucky on that. Yeah, of course within 30 or 40 miles you will always find a solution. But we don't have to cope with that kind of solutions. When you are in need of an abortion, most of the time you're not very happy about it. that when someone tells you lies or tells you you're not really making a good choice or being a bad person, you have to pack your bags and start searching for another hospital, it's really not very respectful towards patients. So for a country that calls itself quite liberal and secular, it's quite a shame to me. So for some people, abortion is less available, especially if you consider that not every young woman has the same knowledge and courage to act, to travel, to search for other information, and so on. My conclusion is that the Catholic movement and groups may have lost their political power, because the Christian Democrats, for instance, they are now at let's say 15% of the vote, not even, so that's not much. The Nationalist Party is much stronger in Belgium, and then all the other votes are divided between socialists, liberals, Greens, etc., and the far right, unfortunately. But we can't really say that, like in the 60s and the 70s, the Catholics had all the power, political power in our country. But they have financial means to monopolize the healthcare system, which is a very expensive service, of course. And this gives them the possibility to make the implementation of our abortion bill and euthanasia bill as well quite difficult. We need politicians who act, who pronounce themselves against the hypocrite and undemocratic behavior of the Catholic healthcare institutions. One of my colleagues took action. He had to. He opened an abortion clinic in the town where he's mayor, in Mechelen. That's a town between Antwerp and Brussels. Now, I'm happy he took action. He could have stood there and complained and do nothing. But I do regret that it's a one-shot action. I think we need a sustainable solution. We need a minister for healthcare that has the courage to speak up and to insist that those hospitals implement the law. And therefore, we don't need a minority of politicians to stand up. I'm one of those. I'm called a little bit of a fanatic and maybe even worse. I don't care much about it, but I do regret it that we don't have the majority of politicians to be more creative and courageous to condemn all these practices, turning around the issue, being creative, not to apply the laws, and so on. I think we need renewed action in Belgium. A lot of people have fallen asleep. A lot of atheists have fallen asleep in Belgium. They think that everything's okay now, it's in the pocket. But a couple of weeks ago, I discovered that the pro-life movement is very active again lately, and especially in some of our schools. They offer free lessons in sexual education. And yes, it's very funny. I must say that when I read the whole story that some parents sent me, the testimonials of some parents, well, if it weren't so sad, I would have laughed a lot, because it was crazy what they stated in those schools. So it's needless to say that their view on sexual education is slightly different from the views as described in the official curriculum for our schools. Our official curriculum is correct, is open-minded. It doesn't only talk about reproduction, but also about feelings. It is tolerant. It's a tolerant view we're supposed to explain to the pupils in our schools. We are supposed to respect gay people, and so on and so on. Whereas the pro-life movement apparently tells all pupils that only men and women fit. They fit. It's big love because they fit. I was impressed, I must say. And it also has to do with the measure of the shoulders and the hips. So perhaps you don't know this, but a woman and a man, they fit. Because I have small shoulders, large hips, big hips, And you have, well, not as large, large shoulders. That's it. It sounded like a mystery to me, so I wonder what it does to 10-year-old kids. It worries me a little bit. But finally, next week, I will have the opportunity to interrogate our Minister of Education on this matter. I wonder, he's a socialist, so I wonder if he will have the courage to condemn this and to propose to go and talk to those schools and ask them to apply what the curriculum wants them to apply. So, my conclusion, are we in danger in Belgium? Well, maybe, but optimism is a moral duty for humanists, and I'm afraid that we're a bit on a slippery slope because of new attacks, not only from the militant Catholic groups I mentioned earlier, but also from their new allies within the Muslim community. As many other European countries, we also deal with problems of Islamism now and radicalization. So due to their immigration background, they are considered economically vulnerable by lots of our politicians, and they are thus fully supported by the left-wing parties in Belgium because they represent easy votes. So if you can tell someone it's a politician trick, you know, if you tell someone I will take care of you, don't you worry about a thing. I know that you your group particularly suffers from unemployment, so I will take care of you, I will do everything you ask. So if these groups ask to have their religion respected all the time and in all aspects, unfortunately it puts a bit of a block, let's say, it blocks a little bit the open debate we should be having on religion and religious demands in our secular state. So this worries me. We should all have the courage to say out loud that secular humanism offers a moral basis for every citizen in a diverse society. The secular state guarantees social cohesion and common citizenship, and that is what I want my colleagues to admit and to say out loud, just as we do here today. Thank you for your attention.